Actually, I just realized I never tweeted out the link to all of this. So while people are getting in, I'm going to sit there and try to real quick, gonna get that tweet out that we are starting with our stream. So I hope everyone is doing well. It is obviously election day, so clearly no reason to panic or, you know, nothing else going on. I just dropped my wife off downtown and got to watch all of the what's the word I'm looking for? Buildings being boarded up. There we go. That's what happens when I get a double listen in my ear of what I'm trying to say. So all the buildings are being boarded up. Hopefully nothing terrible happens, obviously, but we are... Half a second. Oh, helps if I can type. There we go. Now I've tweeted it. I've done everything I feel like I need to do. So that being said, let's move on. I was super excited to be able to do this. I know people have been asking for a Q&A. I had been wanting to do a Q&A, and it just so happens that tonight being election day, wanted to make sure that I had enough time to do it, enough time to devote to it, and I didn't want to spend my night doom scrolling. So I am going to use this opportunity to do some good for the world, going to answer some of these questions that have been going on. Hey, Coach Q, Martin, good to see you. For those of you that are joining for the first time, thank you. I am Coach Carrick, coming to you live from Chicago, Illinois. I'll be going through this live. It'll probably be up for a little bit, and then I will cut up the questions into short clips. So if you're not able to watch this live, which if you're not watching this live, you're probably not going to hear this portion, the clips will be up on the channel. So first question that I got, and I should say I'm going to cover the questions that I received in advance via, email and Twitter, and I think those are the only ways I got questions. But if you have some questions in the chat, depending on how timing goes, I might try to answer a few of those as well. So feel free to throw those in there. I'll try to keep my eye on the chat as well. So first question comes to us from John Dunleavy. My apologies, I'm going to butcher that. I would say we have struggled to get zone dive going consistently this year. Any tips on how to practice this? And this is not the first zone dive question, which I'm not surprised on. It's a much different play, and you tend to coach the blocking differently than you do other plays. So let's get right into it. So the blocking points on zone dive is that for the most part, we are going to block an area or a path and not a man. So that becomes really different than a lot of other plays where you're like, you should get this person. Instead, we want you to get an area. And sometimes what happens is you leave an outside D lineman or an outside linebacker. And one thing we do is we actually cheat. So I'm going to try to use this pencil, and hopefully this will work in a decent enough way. We'll do this in red. So sometimes actually most of the time we'll cheat this A back over Sometimes he's almost directly behind the tackle, because what's really important is this gap between the two of them. And the biggest rule is that no one can split that gap. So when we teach our zone blocking, because that's technically what it is a zone block, is we want the guard to take his hard 45-degree step this way. If he doesn't engage anyone, he's going to work his way up in this cylinder. Tackle is going to do the same thing. And our A-back is also going to do the same thing. So what that creates is this nice little wall here. What this looks like in practice, and let's see if I can bring this up and be... yeah, so if I erase my pen and then I go back to my pen, there we go. So let's go in a basic defense, right? You've got an end there, and you might have this guy in a 3 technique. If we need to go over techniques, we can do that on another video. So let's see if there's here. We'll say that this center has a shade. So center's going to block back here. Our guard is going to take a step. We'll assume that there's no stunt from this tackle. So because he sees no one, he's going to work up to backer. This tackle is going to step. When he does that, he's going to engage this tackle and work his way up. And this A-back is going to do the same. So this A-back block is really where things get really crucial, because this is why we cheat him over, because we can't have that penetration between this gap. So we try to take the air out of that pre-snap, but this guy, this defensive end, can only do a few things. So if he runs forward straight ahead, then the A-back's just going to grab him, hopefully get his head and his shoulder to the inside of that player and just drive his feet. Ideally, we want this to be low. We want our A-back to hit him with a flat back. We want him to flipper with his arm so as not to hold him. But we really just want to engage him there. If this end tries to do something tricky where he maybe squeezes down on this tackle or somehow tries to come into this gap, well, then this tackle is going to have to pick him up. Because if he's doing that, they're not going to send 2 guys through 1 hole. That probably means this guy's either going to come through that way or he's going to twist to the outside, which would be even better for us. The last thing this end can do, and this would be teams that like to play the option differently. If this guy's not a dive player, if he's a quarterback player, he might jump outside here. If he jumps outside, just leave him, right? This play should be hitting right about here. There's no way a guy who's outside playing quarterback is going to be able to make that play. And if he does, good for him. Otherwise, we're just going to keep running forward. What I see a lot of A-backs do is if this guy goes outside, and I yell at my A-backs for this all the time, he's going to come forward and he'll actually turn his shoulders and engage that end. I don't think you have to do that. I think you should tell your A-back to just stay on his track and find the next guy to block, because he has to go outside, around, and try to chase this play like that. So those are the big parts of zone dive. And like I said, there was another question on zone dive in a little bit, so I won't bore you too much with that. I do have another video on zone dive if you are looking for something a little bit beyond this. Well, ask in the next Q&A. So next question, also from John, says, how would you try to keep your B-back in the game when you see a 3-4 eagle look? This is tough to run triple or midline. My thoughts are to run zone dive and get the A-back down on the mic. So B-back versus a 3-4 eagle. I've drawn up a 3-4 eagle with what I think it's going to be. I've lost my pen. One moment. Let me see. Can I? Sometimes I get too tricky with technology and then I've lost my pen, which is never good. Come on, there we go. All right, now that I have my pen back, don't know why that was so weird. And let's do this before I... There we go. All right. So I've drawn up a 3-4 eagle. When I hear 3-4 eagle, I'm thinking that there is going to be... you're going to have your center and your two guards covered. When I looked it up, these guys were on outside shades, so they were going to be in threes. That may not always be the case. If I'm getting this look, zone dive should still probably be a good play. However, you might have trouble getting to this backside backer because there's going to be a lot of junk happening here. So whereas this tackle would generally be, the offensive tackle would be able to take him, you're not going to be able to free up your guard. So what I would do against this, and they may play with their B-back or their backers, right, coming up to the line and doing different things. First thing I would look at is splits. If you can get those D linemen to widen out and create those natural seams, they're going to have to declare and decide whether they want to stay tight or if they're going to walk out with your O linemen. So if they walk out with your O linemen, spread them out a little bit further, and that's going to make running your plays a little bit easier. Especially, so just like zone dive with midline, if this guard has enough space to be able to veer up to the next level, it's going to make our lives a lot easier. So, there we go. So if I erase this, a few other things that I would do. So after splits, I would look into doing formations, right? How can we get them out of what they want or force them to play in a position or a formation that they don't really want to? First thing to check would be, right, over. See how they're going to play this. Are they going to have to bring this backer over? Are they going to bring a safety over? Are they going to flip the cornerback? If they do flip the cornerback, running away from the over is usually the best way to do it. Beyond that, if it's not going to be over, you can do trips, right? Run this A back over here and see how they're going to respond to that. And the last thing I would do, and whether you want to do this, you want to call it heavy, you want to call it tight, right? Show them a 3-man front. I'll mark this as a him for now. Right? One of these is going to force them to have to move their linemen, move their backers, and it's going to open up a seam. Now, whether that's an A gap seam, a B gap seam, it's up to the defense. But there's going to be something there. I would definitely force them to try to play something different than they're used to. If you wanted to get really tricky, right, run both of these receivers here. Make an unbalanced look, because that'll probably shift everyone over. As far as how do you keep the B-back in the game, if you've heard me rant about this, generally I would say that you want your B-back to be one of your best players. So obviously you want to get him the ball. If teams are taking that away via their formation or via their reads, the plays in your arsenal to guarantee that the B-back is going to get the ball, zone dive, which we talked about. I think speed option might be a pretty good look here. If you can do, right, I would leave, depending on your rules, probably this guy unblocked, right? We can get a chip here and get this backer. A back can arc like this, and you're just running straight at him, waiting for him to take quarterback. If he never takes quarterback, the quarterback should just keep running. If not, quick pitch to the B-back and get around the edge. Beyond that, you have down G. So if we move him in for intents and purposes, they might bring this backer down, but our basic rules are going to apply. We'll probably leave, again, this guy unblocked. We can go down. We can go down. We can kick him out. And your A-back is probably looking for safety. You might fold, you might influence. You could do a few different things there. B-toss is something that we don't generally run, but it's a lot like Rocket. And all the blocking should probably be the same. I've seen Navy recently is going to, if they're running B-toss a lot, they'll motion this A-back over here. And they'll just, pull around and block the outside like that. Quarterback reverse pivots, pitches it to the B-back, and it's almost just like an old school student body play. Again, your mileage may vary depending on your B-back. You may want him more between the tackles versus to the outside. But if you don't feature your B-back going to the alley outside often, it might be a good changeup. And the last thing we could do here, you could do a long trap. Trapping is going to be tough against the eagle, unless you're trapping again like this guy. And then it turns into similar to down G. So hopefully that helps. If you are looking for more help within the front, also when you send me questions, you can send me diagrams or huddle film, or really just about anything. So this works theoretically, but then again, your mileage may vary. Our next question comes to us from Cullen O'Brien. What plays and packages do you work in 7-on-7 in the off season? I'm going to assume by 7-on-7, this is in a state where it's frequent for schools to scrimmage 7-on-7 against each other. Here in Illinois, that doesn't happen as frequently. We have done it a few times. But obviously, as a flex bone offense, inner squad 7-on-7s are not the most helpful. So when it comes to what plays and packages we run, we try to emphasize our bread and butter. Sorry, forgive me. I'm just going to do this via my mouse. So our bread and butter plays, take your, 5 to 8 passing plays, right? The ones that you actually feel confident calling in a game, and just rep them. Rep those basic plays, get multiple kids in there. If the defense is showing you different looks, that's beneficial for your quarterback. But you don't really need to get crazy with what you're going to do in a 7-on-7. Our craziest play was, is post wheel. That's what we're going to take into a 7-on-7. And then beyond that, you might want to look at your formations. I will be the advocate to say that your passing plays, or at least, your bread and butter ones, should probably be able to be run out of multiple formations. So for example, if we go, I'm not going to draw out the full offense, but if we were to go trips, right? Your A-back should know what their rules. I'm also right-handed, so all of these formations are going to the right. I hope that's all right. When we run trips, our middle A-back, right, the one that is on the opposite side of the formation, his job is to run the same route as the receiver. So if you ever get in a situation where someone's confused, the kid doesn't know what to do, all he has to do is turn to the wide receiver and say, hey, what are you running? So what that looks like in actuality, right? So normally if you're going to run a smash concept, you're going to run hitch corner, which would normally just be between this X and this A, right? We would have our hitch, and our corner. Those are some things that you can throw at another team. I mean, if you really want them to see how they adjust to over, you can do that. And honestly, in 7-on-7, any plays that you throw in play action to the back that you play action, so a lot of like rocket play action can work really well. I almost feel bad. We don't do a ton of inter squad 7-on-7s, but just rep your stuff. Even if you lose a 7-on-7, at least in our state, no one cares. It doesn't get written about in the newspaper. No one really cares or notices, right? You can use it as a rallying cry if you do well. But I don't think any kid is going home, crying into their pillow based on a 7-on-7 experience. Although I may be wrong. Feel free to correct me. Next question comes to us from Jason Ort. What drills do you like to run in non-contact off-season training for skill/line development? So this is probably something that all of us coaches are having to deal with. The first thing that is going to be important is what your state's definition of contact is. So players have to be consistently socially distanced? When do they need to wear masks? Are they allowed to hit a sled? Are they allowed to hit a pad? Are they allowed to hit each other? Are you allowed to be under center? Are you allowed to mesh? Right? These are all questions that someone should probably tell you. If they haven't told you, you should probably ask, because obviously we want everyone to be safe, everyone to be healthy. We don't want anyone breaking the rules, but the answer to this question is very different depending on what that answer is. So in Illinois, we have different phases that we've, been climbing the ladder up and shooting the ladder down. That was a bad Chutes and Ladders reference. Of different phases on what we're allowed to do and how long we're allowed to do it and how big of a groups we can do it with. But to give you an idea, just some things that we have been working on. The first is heavy conditioning and agility. We lost the ability to be able to use our weight room, which sucks. We were able to do some outdoor stuff with weights and kettlebells and medicine balls and resistance bands. So it's almost like doing home workouts with your team as much as you can. We've also been putting a big emphasis on doing some speed training and some agility training, really working on those muscles on how do you run correctly? How do you jump correctly? Right? Getting the players' knees and their ankles and their feet, just getting them used to bracing that impact. Because it's something we wouldn't normally focus on, but when you have an abundance of time, it's something that has served us well, especially if you're a team that has dealt with injuries in the past. Now's a good time to go into a good, not preventative workout. That's not how I want to phrase that. But work on those things that you might otherwise not. Ball security is something we have worked on. We are allowed to hit people with pads. So really working on not necessarily bowling through someone holding a pad, but how do you step over a pad and be able to cut and juke and make, try to avoid contact without, running a guy over, especially me, because if my players run into me, I get a little heated. If you are allowed to do more under center and mesh type drills, your basic A-frame, right? Just run through plays. even without an offensive line, right? Be able to get under center or have the quarterback start with the ball, mark off with cones, have a hose, just running through plays, right? Getting used to the cadence, getting used to the motion, being able to put some defensive players there to be reads. One thing we've actually had success on, because anyone who's coached knows, like, if you just have those hand shields, most kids don't really want to block a hand shield. It's awkward to hold. There are different strategies behind that, but especially if you're an A-backs coach, and this probably goes to anyone, we have some bigger medicine balls that we've been using, and shout out to Matt Miller, who's really big on this. Is if we're trying to practice inside load blocking a linebacker on triple, we'll have that linebacker hold that medicine ball in front of him, high and tight like this, and really work with our guys on being able to get their hands, drop their butts and get their hands up and be able to actually push through that medicine ball, because it allows them to still make that good contact, still throw their hands without, the awkwardness of a guy who's holding a pad. Pods for us is a group period where it's offensive tackles, A-backs, and wide receivers. So this is where we're practicing a lot of our tight, a lot of our closer in wide receiver looks, a lot of our outside runs, zone option kick. But it's something so the interior line can work separately as a group, and then the tackles and the A-backs and the receivers can start to get some more experience with what they're doing and working together as a unit. This could be in conjunction with that, or this could be a separate part of A-frame, or like a team period as a junk front period. If you're not doing that, as a flex bone team, you probably see a lot of like defense of the weeks, a lot of weird stuff that people don't normally do. And your guys need to be ready to combat that on Friday night, right? Someone comes at you, practice against one thing all week, they come out in something different. You can't just have your guys panic or like guess, right? Your plays and your coaching should have very basic rules so that no matter what front the offense sees, they should be able to identify who's number one, who's number two, who's number three, where's the backside scoop, who's pulling, who's in motion. Is there, we'll talk about audibles in a little bit. But the junk front doesn't have to be true defensive fronts. Just throw different combinations of D linemen and linebackers out there and run plays. Make them identify it early and then run the play, because that's going to serve them on, I assume we're playing Friday nights this year, but that'll serve them well on Friday night if they see something they're not expecting. And then lastly, I don't know why I wrote football. I think I meant stance start fundamentals. Maybe we'll chalk that up to coach was doing too many things this afternoon. Stance and start. If you're in a skill position, this could be throwing routes. This could be for A-backs, working on your motion, working on your blocking paths, working on your arc steps. All those little things within football that you can get better. Just because we can't go 100% and tackle people to the ground doesn't mean that we can't get better at the little things. I know we're looking at this as an opportunity to hopefully sneak up on some people with the work that we're putting in our non-contact days, or our contact days. So yeah, I'll be curious to see if anyone has any other non-contact drills, non-contact things they're focusing on. I'd love to hear it. I'm sure Coach would too. Our next question comes to us from Coach Welch. Any ideas on QB audibles or coaches changing plays in a no huddle? How to figure out how the defense is aligned during the pre-snap in order to call the right play? So, with this, there's a few different takes on audibles. So the first thing you can do is what I call riverside, and that's just changing the direction of the play. So for example, if we were to call triple right to this, generally we want to call triple to the B gap bubble, or if there's a B gap bubble. And right now there is not. So a riverside would be like a reverse or an other side, and would change the play from triple right to triple left. That's a really basic call. If you have an experienced quarterback and or a quarterback you trust, that is a check he could make at the line. It's really quick, right? If triple is called, if midline is called, right, your base plays, and they see that it looks better the other side, change the direction of the play. Second thing with audibles is they could check to the sideline. This is, I'm sure you've seen the boards that college teams use, right? They usually have, corporate logos or funny characters or weird things on them. There's all kinds of ways. I would research the different ways that you can call plays via cards. I don't want to give anything away of what we do, just in case. Sorry. But having them be able to look at the sideline and as a coach, somehow signal in whether run the play is called or being able to change it. And that you as a coach could riverside, you could do other things. The way that communication goes for us. So we try to, we're a team that huddles, but we like to get to the line early. And typically when we're on the headset, we're in conversations saying hey, all right, this is our play call. This is the look we're expecting. Right away, if we know we're not getting that look, this is what we want to run. So we don't necessarily tell the kids those two plays, but we have those two. So if they run up to the line and they don't give us what we're looking at, we automatically know to show the cards to signal in the correct play. And our team usually has some good communication on how they echo that to each other. I guess that's have a second call ready. The other thing you can do in this is say we did have triple right called here. Maybe instead of checking this over to the left, you say, well, the B gap bubble is covered, but the A gap looks really good. And you allow and have a call for your quarterback to check this to midline on the same side. Or maybe as a coach, you just want to run midline to that side. But again, this goes with how much time on your play clock, how much faith you have in your quarterback. You can do a little bit of everything. Another audible, right, would be if there's a huge gap in the defense, quarterback knows to just, snap it and run. So those are some things on audibles. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we've done. I mean, I could tell you what we did at my high school, but it wasn't very good. In the quarterback's cadence, blue meant we were checking to a pass and green meant we were running. This is how defense worked and their offense worked in 2005. So if anyone has anything else on audibles, again, drop it in chat or leave a comment on this, as I'm kind of interested in this as well, because you want to be able to check yourself into the right play, but you also don't want to put yourself in a situation where your quarterback is making a lot of reads with an opportunity to mess it up. Another question from Coach Jason Ort, the pride of Iowa. How do you fit the offensive line puzzle together? Best player goes, maulers, quicker guys. And I did these verbatim, by the way, so I didn't fix anything. These are how the questions came in, because this is how people want to know what to do. So let's talk a little bit about offensive line. I think I recorded a video about this maybe it was a few months ago. But as far... man, I should have checked my slides, so ignore that. So in a traditional offensive line, generally you put your giant, world beater, road grader, road graders, giant kids at tackle, and your offensive line winds up getting smaller as they go down. As a flexbone coach, what I found is we kind of like to do the opposite. This also, every time I draw this up, reminds me of Da Vinci Code. My apologies. Another weird movie reference. Generally, we want to put our biggest and best kid at center. And what happens is the biggest thing that we find that can stop us in this offense is if a team has a really good nose guard and he just pushes the center back into the mesh repeatedly. We did have an instance in a game a few years ago where our starting center before a game was unable to play. And we had our 175-pound backup center start against a 275-pound University of Cincinnati commit. Didn't go well. Ugh, I have chills thinking about that game, also because it was freezing and raining. So typically, biggest kid at center. You want your next biggest kids at guards. And then you can survive with your smallest linemen at tackle. And if you think about why that is, very rarely is that tackle blocking a defensive end. And they're very rarely, if they are, very rarely are they blocking them one-on-one or like at the point of attack. Because most of the time you want these tackles to be able to, right, veer release to backer. So a smaller guy with better feet that can get there while a linebacker has to watch the mesh is great. The one caveat to this is if you are a team that runs QB counter, counter option, trap, any type of pulling, your guards have to be fast enough and with a good enough feet to be able to pull from one side to the other. So if he is an absolute, well, maybe you have two absolute beasts, right? Only one can play center. So for your second guy, maybe putting a little stock in, if you have your guards pull, putting the kids that can pull at guard. There's nothing against, right? If you just have 5 dudes, right? And all these guys are just huge. A, I'm jealous. But B, there's nothing wrong with that. Most of us are not in that scenario, though. So if you have smaller, undersized linemen, I would put them at tackle. Put your next smallest or the less biggest. Ugh, I'm butchering the English language. Best guy at center, next best or biggest guys at guard. We can get away with smaller guys at tackle. And then depending on if you have a bigger receiver or a tight end type position, whether he is good enough to start at wide receiver and you bring him in like a tight formation, it's good to think of like, who might your extra lineman be if you need to bring in someone off the sideline. Next, we have... Oh, nothing. Ha. So that's been all the questions that I got today. It's been about 40 minutes. I see one question in the chat of, do I run any I like KSU? KSU, I'm going to guess, means Kennesaw State. The answer to that is no. At least we haven't. There's probably an argument for it. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I think I like the ability to be able to motion one way and motion back, especially if there's a defense that, slides to motion, shifts to motion. I don't know. I like the motion. I feel like the eye kind of takes that away. And I don't see any other questions. So with that, I guess that's all for tonight. This is Coach Carrick from Flexbone 101. Appreciate you hanging out. I'll try to do another Q&A here soon. I've gotten a lot of people reaching out and asking for certain things. Again, I have my email on here. You have me on Twitter. You have me on Facebook. If you've got a question, if there's something I can do to help you out as a coach, please let me, or not even as a coach, player, anyone. I guess you could come to me with relationship advice if you really wanted. But yeah, I'm here to help. I know for those of you that have playoff games this weekend, best of luck. I know my high school, Stony Creek High School in Rochester, Michigan, is playing a highly regarded playoff game this weekend. Best of luck to the Cougars. My Michigan Wolverines continue to let me down. And I have a midline clinic coming out with Coach Banstra on his YouTube channel. Will be out Thursday. So anything that you want to learn about midline, we'll talk about it then. Otherwise, have a great night. Try not to doom scroll too much. And go America.